This week on Adventist News Network, a safer future for girls in Thailand.
2 decades after the Bosnian War, an Adventist humanitarian remembers ADRA relief efforts.
And promoting free expression of belief at the 7th World Congress for Religious Freedom.
These stories and more coming up.
This is Adventist News Network, a service of the Seventh-day Adventist World Church. Thanks for joining us this week.
First in the news, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency in Thailand is working to protect girls from forced prostitution with its Keep Girls Safe program. The agency has opened a shelter for at-risk girls from underprivileged families. The girls receive food, education, and protection from human trafficking. ADRA volunteers say many of the girls come from rural villages where education is not valued. One young girl was recently rescued from life as a day laborer in the fields where she was vulnerable to trafficking. Now, in a safe and nurturing environment, she dreams of one day working as a language teacher.
Top church officials have identified 24 cities where they plan to hold targeted outreach efforts in the coming years. It's the next step in a plan voted last year by Adventist church leadership to focus on urban ministry worldwide. In Moscow, Russia, and Kiev, Ukraine, the church is expected to hold dozens of outreach meetings, followed up by small group training. Church leaders say they'll plant new churches in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Lagos, Nigeria. They'll also enlist alumni of Hiroshima Adventist Academy to help with outreach in Tokyo, Japan. The urban focus begins next year with outreach in New York City.
Parents of children with cognitive disabilities in Mongolia are now eligible for a government home care allowance, thanks in part to the efforts of ADRA. The agency recently joined the Association of Parents with Disabled Children and the Ministry of Social Welfare and Labor to lobby policymakers in the country. Previously, Mongolia only extended a home care allowance to parents with physically disabled children. The allowance is paid monthly and covers the cost of permanent home care for children who need assistance their parents can't provide. ADRA officials say the decision helps change the way society views cognitively disabled children.
2 decades after the Bosnian War, Tiomir Kukolja is remembering the siege of Sarajevo. The Adventist humanitarian and journalist spent a month in the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, shadowing ADRA relief efforts during the longest siege of the 20th century. ADRA volunteers distributed food and emergency aid, delivered mail, and provided medicine for the sick and injured. You can read his full story, God Has Not Forgotten Sarajevo, at news.adventist.org.
Religious liberty advocates, government officials, scholars, and legal experts met recently to examine the influence of secularism on religious expression. Garrett Caldwell reports from meetings in the Dominican Republic.
Nearly 900 representatives from more than 50 countries gathered in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic for the first day of the 7th World Congress of the International Religious Liberty Association. Taking place in the picturesque beachfront Barcelo Bavaro Convention Center, the shifting conditions of religious liberty around the world means that many advocates arrive with the circumstances of other shores on their mind.
We have a big issue in the northern part of Nigeria whereby Christians and Muslims are having problems and Muslims are fighting Christians. So we need to equip ourselves and see how we can bring both Christians and Muslims around the table so that we may talk and agree to tolerate one another and live in peace.
IRLA President Denton Lotz said, "Where religious freedom is denied, other freedoms are also denied," as he highlighted the need to be diligent in pursuing what he called a fundamental human right in the first plenary session. Speaking to the theme of the Congress, Secularism and Religious Freedom, IRLA Secretary General John Gratz asked several questions that would bring focus to those listening in the packed audience. What is secularism? Is it on the rise or in decline around the world? Is it a threat to religious freedom? In a morning keynote address, Robert Seipel, appointed by U.S. President Bill Clinton as the first ambassador at large for religious freedom in 1999, challenged the audience with the idea that the church itself has been complicit in the rise of secularism in Western societies, a thought that was referenced many times in other discussions throughout the day. Breakout sessions met in the afternoon under the topical theme Secular States and Religious Freedom, including an evening session giving an overview of some of the challenges to religious freedom in northern Nigeria, Mexico, and North Korea.
The World Congress of the International Religious Liberty Association was first held in 1977. Since then, the organization has grown worldwide, promoting its philosophy of free expression of belief for everyone.
We've come here today to stand for freedom, to proclaim together that every man and woman, no matter where they live, has the right to worship freely. This is our mission, and we've also come together to work for freedom. This is our pledge.
Established in 1893, the International Religious Liberty Association is the world's oldest freedom of conscience advocacy organization. It's sponsored by the Adventist Church and holds a World Congress every 5 years. To learn more, check out irla.org.
When we come back after the break, trusting God in the face of difficulty.
Death is the only inescapable, unavoidable, sure thing. We are sentenced to die the day we're born.
Death is a debt we all must pay.
Some people are so afraid to die that they never begin to live.
Every man must do two things alone. He must do his own believing and his own dying.
Death is not a period, but a comma in the story of life.
He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away.
Welcome back. Here's Sandra Blackmere with a preview of this month's issue of Adventist World.
We're thrilled when we hear reports of God's miraculous deliverance in challenging situations, or healing from disease in answer to fervent prayer. These accounts grow our faith and courage. But not every story has a happy ending. So how do we relate to those situations that don't turn out as we hoped? Such as when a loved one, perhaps a faithful Christian, succumbs to a devastating illness. Most of us can't help but ask God, why? The cover story in this month's issue of Adventist World, Hope Without Healing, is one of those why stories. The author, Olin Netteberg, and his wife Danae serve as missionary physicians at the remote Adventist hospital in southern Chad, Africa. As the only physicians for a population of 200,000 people and with very limited supplies and facilities, the Nettebergs are often the only hope for healing that many of them have. But when a severely burned child is brought to Olin for treatment, he determines not to get attached to what he terms a hopeless case. In spite of his best efforts, however, Dr. Netteberg can't help but be drawn to 8-year-old Emmanuel. And through this very difficult ordeal, he learns that when questions are unanswerable, we can still trust. Also check out the devotional titled Obedience 101, in which author Lindell Chiomenti learns that sometimes the frustrations we have with training our beloved pets might just be similar to those God has with us. Also take time to read the World Health column on huffing and puffing about tobacco, where GC doctors Handysides and Landless discuss what is described as one of the greatest emerging health disasters in human history, and what we as Adventists can do about it. This is an issue you won't want to miss.
Decades ago, Fraser Mathis pledged to impact the lives of orphans. Now he's watching them embrace the same spirit of sacrifice. Tanya Holland has this report.
Today's guest on Meet a Missionary is Fraser Mathis, founder, director of Global Vessels. Fraser set a goal more than 23 years ago to make a difference in other people's lives. He says the key to life is helping others, and that's exactly what you're doing right now in Tanzania. You have built homes and an orphan for children in Africa. Tell us what that's like, those kids there.
Well, the kids are really fabulous. You know, I can tell you one story about one of our little boys, Simon. What we decided to do was gather food and take it out into the community, and clothing. So we passed out all the food and the clothing, and we were done. All the children were excited. They were able to help somebody because we tried to instill within them, even though you're an orphan, you need to be able to give back. So we're riding back in the vehicle, and one little boy in the neighborhood runs and he catches up with the van, and we stop, and he says, "You have any more clothes?" We said, "No, we're out of clothes." My little 5-year-old Simon pulls off his shirt and gives it to the little boy. And I mean, you know, everybody was just, Simon, everybody was in tears, because he really got what we were trying to get them to understand, that it pays to be of service.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Fraser. Adventist missionaries are not a thing of the past. They are serving all over the world. They come from everywhere, they go everywhere, and they're doing all kinds of things to tell the world about God's love. Soon return. Join them. Become a missionary. Visit our website at adventistvolunteer.org.
Do you follow ANN on Facebook or Twitter? Well, Megan Browner shares your ideas on this week's Adventist social media highlights.
Here on ANN, we've been talking a lot about religious liberty. This week in social media, we asked you to tell us, what does freedom of religion mean to you? On Twitter, Jared Thomas quotes Joshua 24:15, saying, "Religious liberty means that I can choose this day whom I will serve, according to my conscience, without fear." On Facebook, Josephine says it is freedom of whether to worship, where to worship, and how to worship. Andiello says, "Religious freedom is being able to worship the Lord God, the creator of the universe, without any hindrance from any arms of the law." Victoria says it means she can worship the Lord God the way he directs her to worship him, through his holy word, the Bible. Grace says religious freedom means we are one in God, despite the fact that we have different doctrines. Jim adds, freedom of religion means serving God according to the Bible's teachings, without anyone forcing you otherwise. Hache says it means freedom of choice. And William says, freedom of religion means everything. Thanks for joining our discussion this week. Don't forget to check in on Twitter and Facebook for next week's question.
Still ahead on Adventist News Network, a church-supporting ministry meets the infrastructure needs of burgeoning church growth in Zimbabwe.
But up next, this week's Tech Corner.
As I was reading through The Great Hope, this phrase caught my attention. In the truths of His Word, God has given to men a revelation of Himself. And to all who accept them, they are a shield against the deceptions of Satan. Here's why this phrase brings me hope. I'm a firm believer that we are living in the end times, and to know that Satan is out there working harder than ever to deceive mankind, I'm kind of scared. But I can hold on to the truths of God as revealed to us in His Word. And this brings me hope because His Word reveals His character, and His character is my shield that I can use against the deceptions of Satan.
Welcome back. If you want to share a presentation, there are plenty of options beyond passing around a thumb drive. John Beckett explains on this week's Tech Corner.
People who make presentations are often asked for a copy or would like to share them more easily. Of course, one option is to share them on a flash drive or attach them to an email. However, these options can be a bit clunky since everyone needs PowerPoint or some other presentation software on their computer. Today we'll talk about several ways to easily share your presentations online and why you might like them. There are lots of choices for sharing presentations online, but I think a few of the best are Google Docs, SlideShare.net, and SlideRocket.com. With all of these services, you can upload your PowerPoint file and get a link to the file to share with others or on your website. If you want the presentation to appear as part of the site, copy the embed code instead of just using the link. Google Docs is completely free, and SlideShare and SlideRocket also offer free but limited accounts. Be aware that both SlideShare and SlideRocket make uploaded presentations public unless you upgrade to a paid account. Their free accounts also have other limitations. To me, SlideShare seems really nice for embedding presentations in web pages. However, Google Docs and SlideRocket both have creation tools that let you work with other people to build the presentation. SlideRocket also has a very nice selection of themes to choose from. Since all of these tools are either free or have a free level of service, I recommend trying each of them out to figure out which one works best for you. In the end, I'm sure you can find one that will help you do a better job of sharing your presentations online.
Hope Channel will be debuting a new type of health program this fall called Go Healthy for Good. It will be hosted by Dr. Narada McKibben and will air every Monday through Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. The program will focus on what it takes to get healthy and then stay healthy through positive lifestyle changes.
The uniqueness of this show is that we're going to approach health from a preventive point of view. And also we're going to be doing a live show, so we're going to be taking questions and comments from viewers in real time.
Giving Hope Channel to your friends and neighbors is a wonderful way to present God's truth to those you love. A married couple in Clovis, New Mexico, Harry and Mary, understands this. They have given out more than 50 satellite systems to members of their church, as well as to others that have shown an interest in learning more about God. They do this because of their desire to tell others about the second coming of Jesus.
The reason why we wanted to start the satellite dish ministry was because we were enjoying so much the beautiful truths that were coming forward to us that it just was on our heart. And I started thinking of different people that I knew, sisters and brothers in the church, total strangers on the street. And I thought, if they knew this, if they only knew this, how much happier and fuller their lives would be. The message would be able to go forward.
I'm Carmen McMurdy, and this has been a Hope Channel update.
Maranatha Volunteers International is a supporting ministry of the Adventist Church. The organization provides volunteer opportunities to build churches and schools around the world.
Zimbabwe is back in the news at Maranatha. The East African country has been confirmed as the site of a new primary school in Bulawayo. Teachers, administrators, and parents are all excited that the existing high school will be augmented with a new elementary school. Zimbabwe church leaders are requesting 1,300 churches and hundreds of schools. Plans for this year's Ultimate Workout and Collegiate Project continue to come together in the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. The event will give more than 160 young people an opportunity to build much-needed churches in these remote communities. Maranatha is celebrating the completion of the Cary Adventist School in Hugely, India. The new school campus, built by volunteers, moves the children from dark cave-like classrooms to this bright facility constructed with one-day classrooms. Construction crews finished the Chisifu School in Mzuzu, Malawi. The one-day school campus will give 400 children an opportunity to receive a Christian education. One-day churches built by Maranatha around the world now number 2,348, and 304 one-day schools have been built to date. Maranatha has a goal in 2012 to construct another 1,300 churches and 250 schools. The one-day churches and schools have become the most sought-after solution to the rapidly growing Seventh-day Adventist Church especially in hard-to-reach places. Learn how you can get involved at maranatha.org.
When we come back, this week's iShare report.
And later in the program, a chaplain's role in Adventist education.
I don't remember any moments that my parents hugged me or held my hands, or I never heard that they say, "Liana, I love you." I was struggling with a severe depression.
And there's no book that I've ever read that gave me a better picture of where sin started and how it's all going to end than the book Great Controversy. I think the giving away of this book to our friends and to people is going to have a tremendous influence on bringing people to an understanding of Christ and His love for us.
Welcome back. Here's Sergio Gonzalez with the news you reported this week.
Welcome to iShare, where you bring us the news. First up today, members of the Bern Adventist Church in Switzerland recently held an outreach event giving away free books and DVDs to the local community. The church members also shared balloons with a message about Jesus' love with the children. Our second update comes from the members of the Army of Youth Ministries. They told us about an upcoming event, the Ambassadors Mobilized Medical Missionaries Training Conference. The conference will feature topics like grief and family counseling and natural healing. Army of Youth currently hosts revival meetings and weekends of prayer in the United States. To learn more, you can go to armyofyouth.org. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to send us your stories at news.adventist.org/iShare.
Many young people are the product of Adventist education, but does that background ultimately prevent them from leaving the church? Mario Ceballos thinks chaplains could play a key role.
One of our greatest challenges that we have is the retention of our young people. We have schools all over the world. Thousands upon thousands of our young people go to our schools, but many times, many of them leave the church. We all have friends and families that have been in our schools. Myself, I'm the product of Seventh-day Adventist education, and I know many of my friends, including some of our children of our pastors, that have left the church. So the challenge is, how are we going to keep them? I like to suggest that we need to place in each one of our schools chaplains that can take full care of the needs of our young people, chaplains that are trained in counseling, chaplains that have experience, chaplains, not just a young person or someone that didn't have enough baptisms, but chaplains that have experience that they can train our young people. Their minds are ready to be nurtured, to be shaped, to be formed. We need the best pastors so that they can help our young people and help them stay in the church.
Now let's turn to Benjamin Baker for a look at Adventist history. This week, details on the life of a prominent Adventist Japanese minister.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. In 1899, on April 30th, Hide Kuniya was baptized in the Muguru River in Tokyo, Japan, by W.C. Granger. Kuniya was one of the first Japanese converts to Adventism and the first ordained to the Seventh-day Adventist ministry. He was a super pioneer, not only effectively spreading the gospel in Japan, but introducing the message in North and South Korea. After over 60 years of ministerial service, Kuniya died just shy of the century mark in 1962. In May of 1893, Albert B. Stouffer entered Brazil, the first Seventh-day Adventist literature evangelist to canvass in the country. Although working São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, it was in the state of Rio Grande do Sul that Stouffer's literature led to the baptism of Claudina and Hermano Prus, hoteliers in the city of Toquati. The Pruses lent their residence to the fledgling cause, and it became a center for Adventist evangelistic efforts in Brazil. Finally, on May 3, 1992, Adventist World Radio broadcasted from Moscow, Russia. AWR was the first Christian media outlet to originate from within Russia for external broadcast. And that was this week in Adventist history.
Thanks for watching Adventist News Network. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And as always, you can visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos.
And if you haven't already, check out our new ANN video podcast. It's the same show you're watching now, but in a format compatible with your iPod or other portable media player. You can subscribe by searching for Adventist News Network Video Podcast in iTunes.
Our good news for this week comes from Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ." Till next week, God bless.
Take care.